process. For example, in one night, there is the measurement on the night of 19th. In one night, there is qada, command comes, and in one night there is imza, then it can go ahead. However, it doesn't fit very well, this explanation doesn't fit very well with, first of all, with the meaning of Laylatul Qadr, because Laylatul Qadr is one night, and secondly, doesn't fit very well with the understanding that we have about the way Allah measures and commands things. So, the best explanation why Laylatul Qadr is somehow hidden in 3 nights is for us to prepare more to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All nights of Ramadan, of course, are very spiritual nights. And the first night of 19th, of course, prepares us by doing certain a'mal. We get a practice too for the 21st and 23rd. And 23rd, we know, is the most important night of Qadr. And in this hadith of that man from Banu Juhayna who came to the Prophet and said, I don't know, I'm very far away and I want to come to mosque on Laylatul Qadr. And this shows that the Prophet, peace be on him, kept vigil in public on Laylatul Qadr. This is one of those very important traditions which shows that this tradition of keeping vigil in mosque was actually going on from the time of the Prophet, and not one night. This hadith at least mentions 2 nights, 21st and 23rd. And the hadith says this man from Banu Juhayna came to the Prophet and said that I live far away, I cannot come 2 nights. So which night you prefer I come for Laylatul Qadr? And the Prophet said, come on 23rd. That means there's more importance attached to 23rd than the night of 21st. However, again, this night is hidden so that we have more sort of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during these nights. Now, how to prepare for it? Of course, the whole fast from the beginning of Ramadan, we know that Layal al-Qadr are situated almost in the last Ashra, in the last 10 days, except night of 19th, which is a bit just before that. The 20 nights or 18 nights that we are, the days we are fasting, the nights, inshallah, we spend in prayer, in Salatul Layl, in supplicating to God, we actually prepare for Laylatul Qadr. The ayah which I mentioned in my lecture, وَمَا كَانَ عَطَاءُ رَبِّكَ مَحْظُورًا, the giving, the gift of your Lord is not restricted, is not limited to anything. So his ata comes indiscriminately for everyone. The problem is that some of us can receive it, some of us cannot receive it. It's just like the waves which are in the air. If we have a receiver with the correct wave frequency, we can receive these waves and we can watch things which are now in the air, but we don't see it. It's not in the air. But if we have a TV set and a good receiver, we can see many things which are in the air now. The same thing is with the, well, of course, this is just a simile. With the ata and gift of Allah, it's not restricted. It just comes indiscriminately. The problem is that our receivers cannot receive it. Our receivers are restricted. And depending how sharp our receivers are, which we can sharpen it during Ramadan, of course, during this spiritual day, month, how sharp it is, then we can receive the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, receiving those blessings need purity. Receiving those blessings need humbleness and humility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the things that we have to somehow try to promote in our hearts. And when we promote humility and humbleness, sincerity, love for Allah, then our reception is increased and our hearts will somehow increase in capacity for receiving those blessings. Therefore, not only this fast actually helps us with that. Fasting helps us with purity, with gaining humbleness towards Allah. We know that everything can be misused. Sometimes we fast and we boast. Well, this does not bring us humbleness, of course. This has the opposite effect. So, just like, as I mentioned, for example, this sense of going for perfection is sometimes misplaced, and we put it in something which is turned into greed. And the worship is like that. Sometimes we worship and we misuse it in a way that it becomes the opposite. Instead of bringing humbleness and khushu, it brings arrogance for us. So, having in mind all these, the fast would help very much to somehow make our hearts soft. And then, of course, when the hearts are softened, then the spiritual morsels can go in. It can receive and take in the spiritual morsels. And that's why this is called Riyafatullah, the party of Allah. And the party is, of course, not with physical, material food. Abstain to become prepared to receive those spiritual morsels which is prepared by Allah for the party. So one very important thing to get prepared for Layal al-Qadr is to try to somehow gain humbleness, purity, and just a couple of days before Laylatul Qadr, we somehow try to detach ourselves from worldly matters. It's very important. We are attached to the spiritual world as much as we are detached to the material world, and vice versa. We are attached to the material world as much as we are detached from the spiritual world. And this is what Amirul Mu'minin mentioned in the Quran. Dunya and Akhirah are two different directions. Now, by dunya, of course, we don't mean using the provisions that Allah has given us. By dunya, we mean attachment to the world. This is the meaning of dunya. Dunya, ad-dunya, dunya'an. Dunya balaghin wa dunya mal'una. We have two types of dunya. One dunya which is provision, is taken as a means. One dunya which is cursed, which is taken as the end. If dunya is taken as the end, is mal'una, is cursed. If dunya is taken as a means, is provision, is good. Now, Amir Mu'min says, you move towards one because they are in two opposite directions. When you move towards one, you get farther away from the other, and vice versa. So, if we can somehow, before this nice, try to detach ourselves, don't think about anything, worries of this life, worries of the world, job, other things, and try somehow to purify our mind, dedicate our mind to spiritual connection with Allah, then of course we will take much benefit from Laylatul Qadr. The other thing is, before Laylatul Qadr comes, during the day or a couple of days before, we see what actions are advised to do by A'imma alayhimus salam on Laylatul Qadr. Because they are experts of this field, they are doctors of this field. So they have advised, for example, do such and such rak'ah salat, they have advised to do this dua, they have advised to recite the Quran. And then on the night of Qadr, it's important not to be ritualistic. This is very, very crucial. We usually, the easiest way of worship is to be ritualistic. Okay, what should I do tonight? You have to read this dua, this dua, this dua, this salat. Okay, I do them. I divide my time and I do them. Well, this is ritualistic. Inshallah, Allah will give the thawab. However, it doesn't help the heart very much. What helps the heart is that you see, okay, what a'mal are there? And then on that night, you try to do one of these a'mal which somehow connects with you better, associate with you better. This is something which we have learned from Mirza Jawad Aghay Maliki, who is buried in Qom, in Sheikh Cemetery, a very famous man. He was respected by all the Maraji of the generation of Imam Khomeini, including Imam Khomeini. He has a book on Muraqabat wa Amal al-Sana, the watching over what should we do over the year. And in his book he writes, if, for example, on Laylatul Qadr, you see that, but you're reciting the Quran, but you don't feel very much spirituality in it, try to do something else that your heart likes. Like, for example, say, okay, I don't like tonight to do Jawshan Kabir. It's just ritualistic. So I go and recite Quran with attention. Or I cannot concentrate and focus on the Quran, I do Salat. Or I cannot do any of these things, I just go in a room and silently sit and reflect. You see, the most important thing on Laylatul Qadr is that you establish a connection. Then the angels can come in and can somehow bring the blessings of Allah with them. Then the angels, when they pass by, they greet you, and the greeting, of course, is somehow discharging the blessings of Allah on you. This is the way they greet. Salamun hiya hatta matla al-fajr. They say salam until morning to mu'mineen. They actually pour the blessings that they bring with themselves to earth on you. And also, of course, one other thing, because it's Laylatul Qadr, the night of measurement, things are measured according to your niyyah and according to your heart. And that's why they say it's very important you keep vigil, you keep awake, that you are, when your measures are being measured, when your destiny is being measured for the next year, you are in a position that only good is measured for you. Now, we don't know what is good for us, of course. Maybe some calamity is good for us. But what Allah would measure, Allah looks at the heart of the person and says, well, this person deserves these things. This person deserves such and such things. And dua, of course, is important as well, because when the measurement is made, dua is very effective. Allah may change things by dua. We have this verse in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tas'alu an ashya'a in tubda lakum tasu'kum. Do not ask about things that if you find out the answers, it would disturb you, it wouldn't please you. And the occasional revelation was this, that when the legislation of Hajj was conveyed to people, communicated to people by the Prophet, someone went and asked, should we do Hajj every year or not? Now, Prophet didn't say you should do Hajj every year, so why do you ask? He said, do Hajj, perform Hajj once in your lifetime. Then one of the traditions about the cause of revelation of this verse, he said, do not ask about things which are just left vague for you, so that you do not know the answer, and so you are free. وَإِن تَسْأَلُوا عَنْهَا حِينَ يُنَزَّلُ الْقُرْآنُ تُبْدَ لَكُمْ. When the Quran is being revealed, if you ask, then revelation comes. It's automatic. Revelation comes about it, that yes, you have to perform Hajj every year, for example. Then, if you ask and you cannot perform it, then of course you destroy yourself. Now, why I mention this, it says when you ask something to the Prophet while revelation is coming down, the answer will come down. It's automatic. So don't ask. Don't ask. Things that Prophet has left vague for you, don't ask him. Just do what is obligatory, what that vague instructions would put you in sort of leeway. Now, when the measurements of Allah are made on Laylatul Qadr, when we ask and we make dua, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, is very generous, very affectionate, so to speak, speaking our language. Wadud is very affectionate. That if someone insists, asks something, Allah cannot refuse. In our language, of course, He is, of course, subhanallah amma yasifun. He cannot refuse. So dua is very important on that night, that we ask anything that we wish. If it's good for us, inshallah, Allah will destin. And if it's not good for us, inshallah, Allah would not destin, despite our insistence. Because sometimes we insist in something which is not good for us. Inshallah, despite our insistence, Allah would not destin those things for us. These were a few words that I just meant to mention to open the discussion. Now, inshallah, we can discuss about these issues. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi.
Any questions from the ladies?
Assalamu alaikum. And thank you very much, Jazakallah, for a very thought-provoking introductory comment. The question, I was a bit hesitant to be the first to ask the question because it's not directly linked with Shab Qadr. But a question which does trouble me, probably trouble many in the audience, that since our childhood we have learned that as Ramadan starts, Allah ties up the shayateen and Allah's rahmah is on the world. But we look around at the world, it's in such chaos, especially the lands of the Muslims in such calamities in Ramadan. And it makes you wonder why these shayateen are not tied up and what is going on. I wonder whether you will reflect on that.
Yeah, this is a very good question. It's not all shayateen who are bound, actually. The shayateen who try to disturb the mu'mineen are tied up. And this is what the Prophet says, that shayateen are in bound, are tied up. So do not expose yourself to them. Now, we know that usually the heart is a source of attraction, both for angels and for shaitan. If it's evil, shayateen come, go around it, and if they find a way, they penetrate. If it's evil. So the evil doesn't come initially from shaitan. The evil initially comes from us. And then shaitan, when they find that evil, it's just like when the flies find something dirty, they are attracted to it. Exactly the same thing. When the shayateen find something dirty, spiritually, they are attracted to it. And they enjoy playing with it. They enjoy to somehow, and this indulgence of shayateen, they are not, shayateen who are jinn, they are not actually, they don't have a mission to come and misguide us. They enjoy it. They are pleased to do it, okay? And that is why in Surah Qaf, we have that shaitan and the man, a shaitan who is attached to a person. They are both taken together to the court of Allah. Both of them together. And this is the qareen. They are actually companions of each other. And in Surah Qaf, it says, قَالَ قَرِينُهُ, the shaitan, who was his companion, said, رَبَّنَا مَا أَطْغَيْتُهُ, my Lord, I did not mislead him. وَلَكِنْ كَانَ فِي ضَلَالٍ بَعِيدٍ, I found him misled. Then he attracted me. Actually, he deceived me. I was somehow attracted to his evil. And then Allah says, قَالَ لَا تَخْتَصِمُوا لَدَيْ, do not argue in my presence. وَقَدْ قَدَّمْتُ إِلَيْكُمْ بِالْوَعِيدِ, I sent you. Now, this is addressed to both shaitan and man. I sent you my warnings. That first of all, you don't indulge if you see evil things. Don't indulge by playing with it and whispering and somehow magnifying it. And man, you should not, of course, let shaitan to come close to you. Now, the shayateen who are bound are these shayateen of mu'mineen. Not, of course, we see all mischief going around, okay? The shayateen of mu'mineen are bound for the respect of the month, and respect of the fast, and because they are guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those who do not fast, intentionally of course, not for any, their shayateen are not tied, they are just released. They do. Those who fast for the respect of fast, the shayateen are bound. Unless if they themselves go visit the shayateen. So then the shayateen of course could do this. So this is the explanation. I don't know whether it explains it.
Assalamu alaikum. You talked about emptying the mind of the dunya. Could you suggest any exercises, any method to help with that?
Any method? Well, the method is just let it go. I mean, especially in a couple of days you can do that. Just let it go. Be may what comes. I mean, come may what come. Just let it go. Don't think about it. And then you would see, I mean, if we do this continuously, we see that it becomes part of our character. It becomes very easy. But at the beginning, it's very difficult. Now, an exercise for especially a couple of nights before Laylatul Qadr, just let it go. Okay, whatever happens, I don't care. So the heart will be empty a little bit about dunya.
Thanks. Bismillah. I've got a few questions for you. One following on from the brother's question about you're saying if the mu'mineen, shayateen that are going to trouble the mu'min, they are bound. But then these people like ISIL, they do salah, they do fasting. People like ISIL, they do salah, they do fasting, they have big beards as well. They give, they recite Quran. So how come?
Stupid people don't need shaitan. Stupid, yes.
Yeah. So the question often is, so they are, yet they do satanic acts. So how do we explain that?
If certain evil qualities become part of your character, then you don't need shaitan for it to deceive you. It's part of your character, okay? And you continuously do what flows over from your character. And people like that who do fast, pray, but certain things have become part of their character which is evil. That evil would continue, even in Ramadan would continue. We have to know that for us to go astray, we don't always need a shaitan. We go astray, many a time we go astray ourselves. And then after we are astray, shaitan comes. For example, after they are astray, shaitan comes and says, kill all these Shia. Okay, it makes it easy for them to do that. So when I say mu'mineen, of course, not everyone who claims to be mu'min, the shaitan is bound for him. I mean, mu'mineen who are truly believers and shayateen are bound with sincere heart, they want to fast. Of course, these people have sincerity probably as well, but as I said, stupidity is worse than shaitan. I mean, if someone is stupid, then it's worse, several times worse than if shaitan wants to deceive someone.
But they're killing people in the name of God. Today I read an article, they're even raping women, calling it jihad and nikah. I don't know where that's come from, justifying in the name of Islam.
Of course.
So it is a very, it's a very perverted kind of
you see,
iman they have. I don't know, how did this come about?
I think Quran is very clear about this. Because the Jews were, during whole history, were the most committed people to their religion, to the instructions of the Bible. And the Quran criticizes the Jews more than any other nation, that you have actually perverted all the instruction of God because of your perverted hearts. So, and the Quran calls them kafirin, doesn't call them mu'minin. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. They are Ahlul Kitab. They believe in the book. They believe in Jesus. They believe in Moses. But the Quran says they are kafirin. Now, if we want really to deal with people like ISIS, yes, of course, apparently they are Muslim because they declare Shahadatain. But by the standards of the Quran, they are kafirin. They are perverting the whole rules of Sharia, the whole rules of God. They are emptying it from the spirit, the way the Jews of the time of the Prophet were doing. So this is what happens. And I mean, if someone is like that, and Allah curses them, then whether the shaitan is there or not, they are perverts. And for example, about the Jews, we have لُعِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. Now, كَفَرُوا مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل, those who disbelieved from Banu Israel, it didn't mean that they went out of their faith. No. They were very, very committed Jews. They are rabbis and all these things. Okay? But it says, لُعِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل عَلَى لِسَانِ دَاوُودَ وَعِيسَى بْنِ مَرْيَمَ. Both Dawood and Isa cursed them. Now, if someone is cursed like that, then shaitan be there or not, they cannot find any way towards the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, they may fast, they may pray or do whatever. I usually, whenever I read something about Jews in the Quran, I somehow spontaneously compare ourselves with it. Because this is not only about one nation. It's about all religions, all nations are the same. So if we are like them, we are cursed in the same manner. And if we are cursed, then Ramadan, other than Ramadan, anything we do is just useless. Just like Khawarij at the time of Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam, same thing.
And also, I wanted to ask you, what is this tradition about the 27th night? How? Because
27th night usually is taken by Ahlul Sunnah to be Laylatul Qadr. But in our tradition, the night of 27th is one of those very holy nights as well. But not Laylatul Qadr. It's not Laylatul Qadr, but it is something next to Laylatul Qadr, so to speak. So we try to keep vigil on night of 27th as well, but not as Laylatul Qadr, of course.
And then what about, because everybody's starting different days now in Ramadan, depending on who they follow. So
Unfortunately, the angels don't follow Maraja. You see, they come down only on one night. So they don't say, for example, we are followers of Ayatollah Khamenei or Sistani, you come on this night. They come on one night. Now we are confused what to do. What we can do is that we can actually keep vigil for several nights, 6 nights instead of 3 nights, to make sure that we have actually caught and received the blessings of Laylatul Qadr.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you again for the excellent lecture, Jazakallah. My question is about your lecture yesterday. You said on the day of judgment, we will regret that we didn't make the best of what was in our heart. Could you please elaborate on that? Thank you.
Yes, you know, we have tremendous potentials, and certainly we do not realize all these potentials during our life. And whatever we do not realize, whatever we do not fulfill, remains, of course, unfulfilled for us. Inshallah, when we go to paradise, of course, we go higher and higher, but certain potentials are just remain unfulfilled. Now, on the day of judgment, the disbelievers, okay, regret that they did not believe. Okay, the believers regret about those potential that they did not realize, and they could have achieved more. And however, that regret is temporary, because after they go to paradise, there is no regret there anymore. But the day, Yawmul Hasra, the day of regret, is the day of judgment, where everyone, of course, except the Muqarrabun. Muqarrabun are different. Everyone regrets about their lives whether they did not believe at all or they did not completely fulfill their potentials.
Sorry, and one more question. You said paradise, the way it's described in the Quran, it's figurative. It's not. It's just made for us to understand. Is that the same for hell, or is it hell is real, the way it's described?
No, the same thing. You see, when I say figurative, I don't mean that it does not exist the way it's described, okay? But even the way it's described, it doesn't fit our world. It's described in a way to tell us that it's different from this world. I mean, if in this world we never can imagine rivers of honey, I mean, how many bees we need to flow rivers of honey, okay? Or how many cows or who is going to milk these cows to flow a river of milk, for example. When it said rivers of honey and rivers of milk, we realize that that world is different from this world. And all those physical things mentioned is different from what we understand here. It's real life. This is just a sort of fake life. It's shadow of life. That's the real life. It's not figurative in that sense, but of course, we cannot take it very literal to say that exactly the same thing which is in this world. For example, I give you one example. You eat the birds there, but they very willingly come, they let you eat from them, and then they fly and go. What sort of life is that? They never die, they never finish, and you enjoy eating them. They enjoy you eating them, actually. You enjoy eating them, they enjoy eating. So what sort of life is that? It's completely different from the life that we have here.
Ladies, do you have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum. I had two kind of linked questions. One is that sometimes, I don't know if anyone saw the video where the people were recruiting for ISIS, and there was lots of Quran playing, and there was lots of reasons why people should go out and fight jihad. And when you read it, when you see the video, everything which they're saying is true in a sense. Muslims are being oppressed. Jihad is obligatory. You shouldn't hang on to this dunya. So you can see the truth in what they're saying. But the only problem is that when they get there, there's something radically different happening, because they're committing all kinds of oppression and they're committing all kinds of terrible acts. But the first question is then, for somebody who's, for example, willing to leave everything behind, sacrifice their life, sacrifice their career, their degree, whatever it is they're doing, and is willing to make that commitment and go and fight and die for what they think is the cause of Allah, how is it that Allah would allow that person to become misguided and to go off and commit something and to go and join such a horrendous group? And secondly, connected to that is with ourselves, sometimes how are we supposed to know when we're rightly guided? Because, or when we're committing to something, that we're not being terribly misguided like that. Like in that example, you think you're going to drop everything, you're going to leave your career, you go, but actually what you're going for is something terrible. Thank you.
Thank you, very good question. This Khawarij at the time of Amirul Mu'min Ali ibn Abi Talib, they were very pious people, and they are described as praying all nights, fasting all days, reciting the Quran. They were memorizers of the Quran and such things. But the point is, the arrogance of having these things led them to think that they are the authority in knowing what is the intention of God with these things. Had they followed the authority which God had appointed, who God had appointed, of course they wouldn't have fallen into that pitfall. Our problem is usually that as soon as we recite a couple of verses from the Quran and we know a couple of hadiths, then we think that we are the authority and we can decide what is right and what is wrong. This arrogance in itself is evil. You see, we are actually, a very interesting thing about the life after death is that, these angels are very pure beings. They don't come to torture anyone after death. what happens? When they come to teach people how to get ready or initiated into the life in Barzakh, whatever they say, if the soul is perverts, when they hear it and when they take it inside, it is perverted. And therefore, they cannot, first of all, believe in these angels. They hate them. Whatever they say is not something that they can accept, and it would be torturous for them. So if a soul is perverted, the Quran, the more Quran they know, the more perverted they become. The more they recite, the more perverted they become. The more they pray, the more perverted they become. Because these things, when they go inside the heart, they are polluted, they are perverted. Now, with regards to Khawarij, there are a couple of things. First of all, they were invoking a verse of the Quran against Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that is because Amirul Mu'min accepted the arbitration, and arbitration is hukm, okay? Now, first of all, they forced Amirul Mu'min to accept the arbitration. They came with sword over his head. They said, call back Malik ibn Ashtar, otherwise we kill you. He called back Malik ibn Ashtar. Then they say, let's an arbiter judges between us and that army, because we don't want to kill our brothers. Now you see, they saw the army of Muawiyah as their brothers. We don't want to kill our brothers. Amir ibn said, okay, we put an arbiter. Abdullah ibn Abbas, you go as an arbiter. No, we don't accept Abdullah ibn Abbas. We should say who should be the arbiter. Okay. Abu Musa Ash'ari is the arbiter now. He goes, he's deceived, comes back. The Khawarij said, no, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have accepted arbitration. إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. Arbitration and hukm only belongs to Allah. This is a verse of the Quran, of course. إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. Then they said, we made a mistake and we repent. Now, Ali, you made a mistake, you have to repent. So Ali said, no, there's nothing. They said, no, otherwise you are kafir. If you don't repent, you are kafir and we fight you. And of course, had Ali accepted this, he would have somehow judged against himself. Now, you see how things are diverted from its original direction. About this verse, kalimatu haqq, in al-hukmu illa lillah, Ali ibn Abi Talib said, kalimatu haqqin. This is haqq, of course. Yuradu bahal batil. However, what is intended by it, by these people, is batil. Now, this batil is either intentional or out of ignorance. For most of them, it was out of ignorance. For the leaders, they were intentional. For most of them, out of ignorance. And he said, you know, they say, "En al hukmu illa lillah," judgment belongs to Allah, but they intend a wrong meaning. They say, "En al imratu illa lillah," government belongs to Allah, and government, of course, belongs to men. Government don't belong to Allah. We govern on the earth. Now, despite all these, now, coming to your second question, what happened to these just young recruits who go there and they are killed? How Allah judges them, we don't know. But certainly, they are not mujahideen. Certainly, they are not receiving the sawab of shuhada. However, Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam advised his commanders and his sons to a very important, actually made this very important point. He said, "La taqtulul khawarij min ba'di." After me, do not kill khawarij. فَلَيْسَ مَنْ طَلَبَ الْبَاطِلَ فَأَدْرَكَهُ كَمَنْ طَلَبَ الْحَقَّ فَأَخْطَأَهُ. The one who seeks batil and actually find batil, like Muawiyah. Muawiyah, from the first step, he was seeking batil and he found it. The Khilafah, he wanted Khilafah, he took it for himself. There was no doubt about it. This is the one who seeks batil and finds it is not the like who seeks haqq and mistakes it and takes something else instead. Now, about these people, we say the same thing. They are after haqq, but they hit batil. What to do with them? What we do with them, of course, we deal with them the way Amir al-Mu'minin dealt with Khawarij. We fight them, okay? And Amir al-Mu'minin said, if I do not pluck the eye of this fitna in my lifetime, no one after me can do it. Because he was the wasi of the Prophet. If he fought against Khawarij with that appearance which deceived everyone. I mean, everyone said, these are saints. All these are saints. I mean, we killed all of them, okay? No one, he said, I plucked the eye of the fitna, and no one after me could do it. He did it. Now, how Allah judges them, we don't know. We don't know how Allah judges them. What we have to say is that they are deviated. Many of them are perverts. The acts which they carry out with literalist understanding of the Quran, with narrow-minded understanding of the Quran, with arrogant understanding of the Quran, is of course something which just only can come from a pervert heart and mind. This is how we judge them.
Thank you very much for this. If I extend this conversation a point further, I would like your views on this issue. That when we look at what's going on for nearly 20, 25 years now, there's a lot of strife in Muslim communities. Muslim groups from a completely different land, different culture, different dynamics, they in a way take it upon themselves to go in and start leading the Muslims in that area. Whether that started with Bosnia, went on in Afghanistan, in Kashmir, now is going on in Syria, wherever. I would like your comment on it, that in a way is the root of fitna also. That instead of letting the local Muslims lead and supporting them financially, spiritually, in whatever way, but ultimately insisting that let the Syrians decide what Syrians need. And it's nobody else's business. Or let Kashmiris decide what Kashmiris need. And it should not be the business of other Muslims. And a lot of the problem is when other Muslims, Johnnies come lately, take it upon themselves to go and sort out the matters. And that creates a lot more mischief. I would like your comment on that.
Well, especially if those Muslims who go from other places are ignorant Muslims. I mean, if they go ignorantly, then we see the result. What is happening in the Muslim world at the moment, I think is due to two factors. One is the way the Muslims have led their lives in these countries during the past few decades. I mean, look at the example of Iraq, for example. Iraq was a country which totally submitted to Saddam, okay? And Saddam did whatever he wanted to do. Of course, he was brutal, he was ruthless, he crushed very heavily. But I mean, take the example of 8 years of war with Iran. When everyone came, they used all the force and power. 8 years, they extended the rule of Saddam Hussein. Now, this would bring, of course, disruption in society. I mean, if a society like this fights, kills, and then they were waiting for the help of America to come and remove Saddam, as they are now waiting for help of America to come and remove Daesh, or ISIS. In Farsi we say Daesh, ISIS. Some of the problems are internal, I think. And for every ummah, for every nation, Iran, take the example of Iran. At the time of Shah, we were not good people. We made lots of mistakes, okay? And we went towards all this sort of pervert sins that West had brought us as a gift, okay? Now, we had to purify. And therefore, we had a war, we had many martyrs, hundreds of thousands of people maimed, martyred, all these things. Then we had sanctions, difficulties, all these things. I see these things as purifying sort of elements. And now we need purifying elements in other parts of Muslim world as well. Things that which purifies them, makes them to turn inside, to rely on God, to rely on themselves. However, the problem, as you say, the trials and tribulations are inflicted upon us by Muslims. That's the problem. And of course, they are supported by outside. The role of the West here is, of course, very hypocritical, very detrimental. I mean, just look what happened in Syria. They say we don't want, Assad is a sort of repressive man and such things. Now, by helping armed groups against Assad, what we have had now, 130,000 people killed, millions displaced, no life in Syria, and still they are supporting. They are these Western people are ruthless people. They are brutal, absolutely brutal. Now, if a cat in the street they see that's is ill, oh, they take it to hospital, to hospitalize, all these things. But when it comes to outside, when it comes to dealing with other people, they are absolutely brutal. Big example of Syria. Now, take the example of Israel and Palestine now, okay? I was just listening to radio when I was coming here. Everyone is saying Israel has the right to defend himself. Now, defend. 500 rockets are launched into Israel. One person is seriously injured. One person is seriously injured. They have already killed more than 100 people. They have injured 750 people. And they say, yes, Israel has a right to defend this. Is this defense? I mean, killing all these many people. Now, when it comes to these things, I think the problem is twofold. One is from inside and one is from outside. And inshallah, we will get rid of all these soon, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I wanted to ask you about the Holy Quran. It's very much recommended to recite the Quran in this holy month of Shahr Ramadan, in this month of Ramadan. My question to you is, how can we develop that connection, that relationship with the Holy Quran? If I speak of myself personally, I think I have failed to establish that connection. If I listen to other people who have converted to Islam, many have done so through the Holy Quran itself. But for myself, whenever I open the Quran, I read about punishment in the hereafter. I read about the unbelievers. There's nothing which connects with myself personally. And how do I therefore develop that connection with the Quran?
The best thing to establish that connection is that you somehow develop understanding on the meanings of the verses of the Quran. And when you develop that understanding, gradually your interest will develop. And by understanding, of course, I don't mean just sit and reflect and think, what does this mean? No. You have to read commentaries on the Quran. It's very important. Someone who wants to establish a sort of close connection with the Quran, it's obligatory, it's compulsory that they have to read commentaries of the Quran. Because then they hear about the views, how people have understood this. Because commentators, of course, are not ma'asum. It's the way they have understood these verses, okay? The way other people have understood these. And then you make connections between different concepts. Gradually, certain concepts in the Quran would become outstanding for you. You see that certain concepts are repeatedly mentioned, which you previously did not notice. Before reading these commentaries, you don't notice them. And then, of course, continuous recitation with continuous exploration of meanings is something which establishes this connection. Gradually, when you read about kafirun, you don't think that it's them and I am not different from them. Gradually you think, well, I may be one of them. If I have the qualities which are mentioned about these kuffar, I may be one of them, because kafir is not only someone who disbelieves in a faith. Kafir is someone who rejects part of a faith. You know, this shirk that Quran mentions, which is not forgiven, it's not only about idol worshippers. Incidentally, in in Surah Nisa, when Allah mentions "Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bihi," in two places. One place is about idolatry. The other place is about those believers who do not accept part of the faith. They are mushrik as well. You see, gradually these concepts will develop. However, for these concepts to develop, you need to learn more. And for learning more, we need to read the commentaries of the work.
Can you recommend which commentary to read, if you don't mind me asking, please?
In English, I think two commentaries are, the two available commentaries which are good, is one by Mir Ahmad Ali, who was a 12er Shia, and the other one by Yusuf Ali, who was a Bohra Shia. These two are written in very plain language, and very many good ideas are mentioned in them, and they are just like the Quran at the top, commentary as a footnote. I think they are very helpful. These two are very helpful.
Okay, and so when you start the recitation from scratch, would you suggest we start from Surah 1 to 30, or Surah 1 to 144, or do we start from the back moving forward?
Usually in Ramadan, in Ramadan we start from the beginning and end at the end, the 30 juz for 30 days. But in other times, when you, especially when you want to read the commentary, it may be better to read from the end. To read from the end the surahs which talk about more conceptual aspects of Islam rather than rituals of Islam. Those are more important. However, it depends on your interest. Sometimes you are interested in more sort of legal, expanded surahs. Sometimes you are interested in more conceptual surahs. It depends on your interest. Okay? Okay, I think. Any questions from ladies? No. Okay, inshallah, khair. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give us the blessings of this month. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would help us in Laylatul Qadr to achieve what His awliya al-muqarrabun would achieve. Inshallah, He would help us to be able to spend our nights, the remaining nights of Ramadan, in worship and prayer, in His love and humiliation. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات وعجل اللهم في فرج ولينا صاحب الزمان وصلى الله على محمد وآله.
If we can just thank Sheikh Bahmanpoor for giving up his time in these nights, inshallah we'll be seeing him a lot more here at Hyderi in the future. So a big salawat to thank Sheikh Bahmanpoor.